What would a 150-year-old Dutch company that builds wind turbines and does oil and gas infrastructure and seawalls and land reclamation and built the Palm Islands in Dubai, what would they have to do with Kafka? Well, I don't know, but I want to hear about it because all those things are really cool. So that company is Van Oord, and today I have Marlon Hiralal and Andreas Wombacher on the show to talk about their initial Kafka use case and really their entrance into the world of being a technology company. It's all on today's episode of Streaming Audio, a podcast about Kafka, Confluent, and the cloud. Hello and welcome to another episode of Streaming Audio. I am, as always, your host, Tim Berglund, and I'm joined in the virtual studio today by a couple of guests from a company called Van Oord. By name, you are Marlon Hiralal and Andreas Wombacher. Marlon and Andreas, welcome to Streaming Audio.
Yeah. Thank you for having us with you, Tim.
I want you to tell us a little bit about yourselves, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about Van Oord. I have just the briefest background on the company, but who wants to tell us about Van Oord? It's pretty cool company.
Okay. So in Van Oord, I am the enterprise architect, also taking care of the data management environment. In fact, we started this journey from scratch. Van Oord itself is a family-owned company, 150 years of experience with the international marine contractor. So, as you can understand, we know a lot of how to do dredging, how to do windmills at sea, build them at sea, lay pipes and cables on the sea surface, as well as building infrastructure. Okay, I will just let Andreas also shortly introduce himself before I go further into telling you more about Van Oord.
Hey, my name is Andreas, and I'm responsible for the data architecture of this data platform environment. And yeah, Van Oord is a big company doing infrastructure projects, and as you can imagine, it's important that you understand how much time you will take for certain aspects. And in these projects, a lot weather is involved, because if you have certain heights of waves, you cannot rise with a ship which has a 20-meter pole on top of it, right? It will tumble. So they have certain limitations on the weather. So the data is really important to understand, of the environmental data, but also of how actually the projects ran, to make good estimates and to make good offers to the customers of Van Oord on what they can perform in which time, based around the globe and around the year.
Okay, so for this, Van Oord has its own vessels. Okay, our vessels, over 100 large vessels. So we call them also the sailing manufacturers, right? So okay, fabrics. What it means, in fact, is that those vessels have all type of equipment to be able to do those type of projects. It also means that we need all this type of data, not only to daily report to our customers how good we're doing the project and how far we are in the project, but also to give the headquarter information about our performance, that is on finance, right? That is, it's on the project, the planning, as well as to have this data available to also give to the government that the environment has not been, damaged. Okay.
Ah.
Because of a lot of times when we do those projects, one of the small letters are that it's our risk that we keep the environmental sustainable.
Of course, that's reasonable fine print, I suppose. Yeah. It's on you to get that right.
So we need to prove and show where we have sailed, what we have done, and that it was not our fault. Something has happened. Okay.
That's a lot of data, and obviously we're here to talk about what you're doing with Kafka,
yeah.
And you're doing some things with some Confluent technology, and that's what we're here 4. But this is like, when you see a dump truck or something, like the little boy in me kind of comes to life, and I just want to look at the dump truck. So I kind of want to talk about windmills and reclaiming land and stuff just for a minute. So if I've flown in to Amsterdam Schiphol Airport from the north, there's windmills in the water. There's wind farms out in the water. Is that possibly Van Oord built infrastructure out there?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Now I know, because I like this vivid. I'm usually jet lagged at the time, right? This is flying in from Newark or something like that, or Dulles, and I'm like waking up and sleepy, but I see windmills and it's beautiful and I love them.
And if you also see we have something. The name is Dutch. It's Afsluitdijk. It's in fact when it's really storming from the North Sea, then we close, right? We have the gates that we can close to keep the sea out.
Oh, okay.
Also,
no, I haven't seen that. That's awfully cool.
Also Van Oord, yeah.
Okay. And if I've been in the northern part of the Netherlands, is it possible that that's land? Has there been like interesting reclaiming going on in the history of Van Oord where there's dirt that wasn't dirt?
Well, I would say one of our major landmarks is the Palm Islands at Dubai.
Okay.
Created by Van Oord.
Oh, cool. The Palm Islands. Okay.
Yes.
Nice. All right. We'll have to link to a picture of those in the show notes. That's created by... Okay. See, now, this is a really dangerous podcast because, frankly, I just want to talk about these things now. And we have some technology because that's what our jobs are. So we need to move on because that's super cool and really interesting. And it's just kind of neat. 150-year-old family-owned company. It builds windmills, reclaims land. Love it. So anyway, you were talking about there are regulatory pressures for environmental impact. And when you are explicitly reshaping the environment, you want to do that carefully. You want to do that in a responsible way. And that makes sense that you'd have a lot of scrutiny on how you do that kind of thing. And also being an old company. See, it's one thing to be like Uber, right? And I don't know how old they are at this point, maybe 15 years, but they're a digital native and everybody's got legacy code. If you've been around longer than a year, you've got legacy code. But the legacy systems at internet startups don't go back that far. But when you talk to old companies who were big enough to be using computers when there were first computers, you have interesting legacy histories, right? There's stuff that's old stuff. And so I imagine a lot of that, you keep it running, it does its job, it's fine, but some of that you want to modernize. So that's what I'm interested in. What are some of the things that you're able to talk about that you're wanting to modernize, and what systems do they come from?
So, for example, yeah, correct. So, as I told you, Van Oord is really a type of civil engineering company, so not a lot of software or application knowledge by that time. But you need an HR system, right? You need a financial system. So those systems has been bought, been implemented the best way it can, but it has become quite monolithic, right? It has become quite old. And then, just like you were talking about Uber, we also have an engineering department that a couple of years ago started with, okay, we need to build some really fancy applications to be able to do fancy stuff. So we have, on one side, we have the old monolithic environment built in Van Oord. On the other side, we have the more modern that build microservice applications type. But totally disconnected, two different worlds that are not speaking to each other. Okay.
The old legacy, we were using computers 50 years ago, and the new, we're building shiny things, and we're cool, and you're not.
Yes. So here you can see, and then you need to understand that we were an environment that is really about dredging. So software knowledge, IT was not really our piece of cake. So there's no ESB types of things. Okay. There's no data warehouse type of things.
Okay.
So we are looking into this, and then we have all type of challenges because our data need to be sometimes be real time because we have, for example, data coming from applications from the vessels, right? And we have geographical type of data. So a lot of those things were big, requirements for us.
Okay.
In fact, that's when we start looking into, okay, now a lot of companies will, we buy an ASB, we buy a microservice management system, we data warehouse, data lake, call it. That's when we said, hey, we need to take a step back. We need to learn from the Ubers, from fintech companies, from call them. And then is when we start to learn about Kafka. Okay.
So I kind of like this. It's, I'm thinking of, you've got this long history of all this legacy technologies. And I think what you said was really, HR and finance, that stuff was automated, but really it's a company that's about drills and shovels and ships, and not a technology company. And you are now, and kind of the saying that every company is becoming a software company. You're getting on board with that, but late enough in the game that you really don't have a whole bunch of mainframey kinds of stuff to deal with. You really do get to kind of come in like digital natives and build things fresh, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. So exactly, and that's why Andreas and I was talking also about was, we can start fresh. We can go to the proven, coolest, but also proven technology. But at the same time, we didn't have what the other company had, right? We didn't have lessons learned, right? The other companies started with ASB, then saw the pros and the cons, right? The data warehouse,
they know the cons, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were able to choose what we think the best fit solution, right? Going with Confluent Kafka, but at the same time, we didn't have the history to learn about it, right? And to come here. So that's also a challenge for us.
Right. Of a different kind.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. So why were you guys involved, Andreas and Marlon, were you involved with the choice to use Kafka or to go with Confluent or anything like that? Do you know any of the history of how you got down that path?
Yes.
You said you never had an ESB legacy to overcome, which is good, but event-driven architecture is apparently interesting. So how did that all come about?
Guilty. So, okay. Look, we our background, we know ESBs quite well, the pros and the cons. We know streaming platforms by that time, not Kafka, but we have worked with some other ones, and Andreas will explain. We know data warehouse, data lakes, technology. So what we saw is that in all those 15, 20 years or longer, still the companies that bought all those type of technologies were busy with integration, still have not finished it, and at the end, we'll start looking to solutions as Kafka. So what we thought then, why not change it? Why we not say, okay, learn from those companies. So we will start with Kafka, see how much we can solve with that, and if needed, we will look to the other type of part solutions. Okay?
Sure.
So we
if Kafka doesn't work.
Yes. So we change it around and say, okay, and even if it's 80, 90%, it's good enough, right? We are coming from 0%, right?
Okay. And the mindset a bit was, on the one hand side, we needed infrastructure which allowed us to connect different applications in a dynamic, flexible way. And on the other hand side, needed an infrastructure which allowed people to look at the state of a system at a given time without connecting to the system itself. Okay. So people want to see kind of how many employees are running around in the company. as a dashboard, and the other applications like payment applications, project planning, and so forth, they need the information, okay, which people will be around next week, next month, in a timely manner. And this is where Kafka then fits very well in. So we set it then up that we have base changes from one system being communicated to other systems, and on the other hand side, keep kind of a persistent state of a system for a given point in time available for the users with different interfaces and so forth.
I love it. That's there's a talk I've been giving as a keynote a few times over the past year that talks about the development of Kafka itself over time, from its beginnings and features it's added, and you get into current times with KSQLDB and Confluent Cloud and things like that are expansions of the Kafka ecosystem, and also the way it develops inside a company. Like, how does it first, like when Kafka is a toddler inside of Van Oord, what is it doing? And that's the example I give is, you have one application, things are happening, you need the changes to get over here. And that's a great place to start because you're already trying to think about how to operate a new technology. And there's, new event driven paradigms. Nobody's all that good at them because they're new, but it's a simple and easy to think about thing. Like, for everything that's hard about it, at least the diagram on the whiteboard is easy. And so you can take those first steps. So I love that that's your first use case.
Yeah, and you see, we have obviously legacy applications, quite some, and they are often less equipped to deal with these event-driven environments. And we are not in the position to exchange them directly. So we really have to be pragmatic there. And then the approach of going with a change data capture, so propagating changes through the system, is a pragmatic approach to integrate also legacy systems.
Gotcha. But this is an internal system. This is you're speaking in terms of HR things. So it's one of those old legacy HR applications that you're modernizing, and not a data collection of what the vessels are doing, dredging.
No, it goes across the board, okay? Because HR, you have to be an employee of Van Oord to be able to participate in a project. So we need the people who are registered in the HR system, in our project planning tool, to be able to be planned and assigned to a project. And also these people can only record efforts in regard of executing a project. So also there we need the information of the people. So the knowledge of who is participating, who can do what, and who is around is something which is one of the essential concepts which we have to share, of the essential data structures we have to share in the organization.
Got it.
The same like with vessels, right? Vessels are used, as you can imagine, in Van Oord everywhere, for project planning, for execution, for maintenance, for assigning locations, but also consumables of these vessels and all this, so procurement. So it's in all places. These base concepts are really essential to use.
So you're doing change data capture out of a legacy HR system.
Yes.
And integrating that data into, we'll say, more operational.
Partly legacy system also, but also partly new applications which are more capable of dealing with event-driven systems. So it's both sides. And one of the challenges we obviously have is, what is a good event to publish in this event structure? How to represent an employee, how to represent a ship, and so forth. And for us, it's essential to understand who is owner of these data and what do the different fields actually mean. So the data governance, data ownership, data stewardship, this is one of the essential concepts which we are also representing here. And therefore, we connect Confluent Kafka with a data dictionary to maintain that.
To maintain the,
the ownership and have that understandable, right? And the meaning for it. And this also depends or helps us defining the different event structures we are setting up. So from the data structure, but also from the organization of the topics in the Kafka itself.
Got it. Okay. So that sounds like a little bit of a governance layer that you've had to build internally.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, and just tell us kind of from a technical standpoint, a few minutes here, your use case, application integration, integration of legacy application into other legacy applications and things under development, under new development, like all that is textbook. But in a real company, there's always little friction points and things that you have to build, and like maybe there's a connector that wasn't there or something like that. What have been the, to you, interesting parts of the development?
Yeah,
I always want to know what's hard about it,
our
'cause
systems.
that's where people learn the most.
A lot of our systems are Oracle based, and with Oracle and CDC, it's not so easy. So there's obviously the Golden Gate option, and there's a Confluent option now also.
It's plenty easy if you buy Golden Gate, right?
Yeah.
I don't see what's so hard about this.
To convince the right people to spend the money, maybe. So there we needed pragmatic solutions. Okay. Which are, information is important for Van Oord to do their business, right? But it's not the core business. So it has to be efficient in costs to be able to do that. So this is one thing. The other challenge is really about organizing the internal processes. So what we have learned in the time when we dig out, okay, who is actually responsible for which part of the data, that you figure out, okay, we have one system. There are actually 2 or 3 different parts of the organization operating on that system. They all claim to have ownership of certain parts of the information. And now we have to divide that again to make sure that we can also ask the right people for access rights for the right data. Right. As you can imagine, if we are dealing with HR systems, right, it's more like it's unpleasant if some people get the wrong information, right? It can be also costly with GDPR and everything going around.
Oh, yes. Knowing, this person is currently an employee here and is available to these kinds of assignments, okay. But, here's this person's national ID number and kind of like that kind of stuff. You don't want
salary that person is earning, right?
Right. You don't want that in the wrong topic.
So, exactly. And at the same time, we need to know the total cost of that person to be able to understand to make the proposal.
Of course. So one
this
application that's doing project costing has to know something, but
this is why ownership there is so important, right? And it's important to understand how the different concepts or events and event structures relate to processes we have in the rest of the organization. So we are using there then enterprise architecture models to understand the relation of events and topics to the business processes. And with that, we relate it to data governance to explain what the different fields mean and also who's owner of these and why they are owner and what are the related processes to it. So that you get a pretty nice understanding of how the different pieces of the data platform relate to each other.
And that integrated with the Confluent Kafka solution.
Yeah. Yes. Now, Confluent Platform and Confluent Cloud, or just what we broadly could say Confluent, doesn't do all of that. Like we've got components of that. So it sounds to me, and this could be secret sauce that I'm asking about, and we're kind of coming up on time, and I'm asking this big question, but I really want to know, like, what can you talk about what you had to build to make that work? Because it's a hard problem.
Yes, to be honest, we are quite open source driven guys, so we don't have a lot of secrets regarding.
Nice.
Andreas, go ahead.
Yeah, we are using Apache Atlas on the one hand side for the data dictionary,
Excellent.
and which has already from its history from Hadoop systems a relation to Kafka, and has there some features already. And we use models for Insight to manage Archimate models, which are enterprise architecture models.
Okay. Nice.
And it gives in Confluent, right? You have now these extended capabilities of recording the flows and seeing what is going over which flows, which then also enables us to visualize that information in Archimate models. And you can see, okay, this process actually has this kind of traffic going on, and the connector here is stocking or having a problem because of the message format is not compliant to. And so this is kind of the impact on my processes and organization and things like this.
So 2 things. Number one, you guys should really consider proposing to Kafka Summit, APAC, or Americas. That's a really interesting thing. And again, just the work the company does is cool. People want to hear about that, right? They're oh wow, you make windmills. I'm coming, And also, and I'm just sitting here soliciting additional content. That'd make a great blog post as well. I mean, there's cool things going on there. So if you want to talk more about it, I'd love to find other ways to just kind of make this stuff more famous, because you're solving problems that other people are solving, and I think other people could benefit from it.
Yes,
that's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, my guests today have been Marlon Hiralal and Andreas Wombacher. Marlon and Andreas, thanks for being a part of Streaming Audio.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being on your podcast.
And there you have it. Hey, you know what you get for listening to the end? Some free Confluent Cloud. Use the promo code 60PDCAST, that's 60PDCAST, to get an additional $60 of free Confluent Cloud usage. Be sure to activate it by December 31st, 2021, and use it within 90 days after activation. Any unused promo value after the expiration date is forfeit. And there are a limited number of codes available, so don't miss out. Anyway, as always, I hope this podcast was useful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, you can always reach out to me on Twitter at @TLBerglund. That's TLBERGLUND. Or you can leave a comment on a YouTube video or reach out on Community Slack or on the community forum. There are sign-up links for those things in the show notes if you'd like to sign up. And while you're at it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to this podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold. And if you subscribe through Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover it, especially if it's a 5-star review, and we think that's a good thing. So, thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.